Atheism is parasitic. It can't survive, let alone thrive, without stealing nutrients from other worldviews. And this isn't according to me, this is what they say. Atheists now define atheism as an absence or a lack. Atheism is just the absence or lack of belief in God. So, this cordless drill is an atheist because it lacks belief in God. Oh, look everyone, I found another atheist. This one's good at math. Of course, we can agree with atheists on one thing. Their worldview is definitely lacking. Unfortunately, a mere lack of something can't sustain a man, or a city, or a culture. If you lack food, you have nothing to eat. If you lack shelter, you have nowhere to live. If you lack a child bride, you're definitely not the Prophet Muhammad. A lack of water can't quench your thirst. A lack of talent won't make you the star of the talent show. A lack of common sense won't help you avoid dumb ideas. So, if atheism has no positive content, where are atheists getting their beliefs and values and rules? They're getting their beliefs and values and rules from somewhere else. This means that, according to atheists themselves, atheism is an ideological parasite sucking the beliefs and values and rules out of other worldviews. And here we found another thing we can all agree on. Atheism certainly does suck. Christianity was just swimming along like a mighty shark through an ocean of civilizations. But the eyes of the shark are here. They're fixed, looking out into the beautiful and mysterious and sometimes dangerous waters, so it pays no attention to the big dumb lamprey clinging to its belly. The big dumb lamprey, obviously, is atheism, the blood-sucking parasite of ideologies. Now, for all you atheists who heard what I just said and are about to do your best impressions of Thunder when he saw that his master Lo Pan had been defeated in Big Trouble in Little China, I have two pieces of advice. First, if you can't handle a little constructive criticism, maybe don't spend the past 20 years posting Sky Daddy, 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 Sky Daddy. Oops, that's exactly what you did. So, too late to play victim now, battle has begun. Second, since you love latching on to other things to obtain your nutriment, how about latching onto a comedian for a while and feeding on a sense of humor for once? To be fair, we all share this world, and it's good that when one group discovers something, they share it with others. It's good that, in spite of our differences, individuals don't have to discover everything for themselves. Groups don't have to figure things out on their own. Each generation learns new information and passes that information on to the next generation. Language and writing and teaching allow us to keep building. I'm not talking about building some physical structure, although language and writing and teaching help us do that too. Talking about building an intellectual cathedral that we just keep adding to and expanding. More rooms, more domes, more towers and spires. This is one of the best features of human beings. So why would I object to atheists stealing from other worldviews? Well, the problem with the devotees of parasitic atheism is that they don't simply take what they want from other worldviews and then go about their lives. They do something much worse than that. After stealing beliefs and values and rules from other worldviews, atheists pretend to somehow be the true champions of the beliefs or values or rules they stole, and then they portray the very people who gave them the beliefs or values or rules as the ultimate enemies of the beliefs or values or rules. Take slavery, for instance. For many thousands of years, the entire world thought that slavery was perfectly normal. They couldn't comprehend a world without it. Christians were part of that world. They were born into it. In the first century, almost a third of the Roman population were slaves. The number of slaves might be lower in other areas, 10 or 20% of the population, or higher, 40 or 50% or even more. Slavery was part of the fabric of society. But something kept bothering certain Christians about it. So some of them started freeing slaves. And I don't just mean their own slaves. They would buy other people's slaves and free them. Slavery continued for centuries, but Christians eventually ended it in Christian majority countries. And they were so successful in convincing people it was wrong that Western governments insisted that other nations abolish slavery as well. Now, ask an internet atheist today, who are the most pro-slavery people of all time? Christians, he'll reply. And who are the ultimate enemies of slavery, the ultimate champions of human rights? Atheists, of course. Really? Which part of your lack of belief convinced you that it's morally wrong to own another person and that we have a moral obligation to oppose slavery? Let me ask an atheist. Hey, atheist, I can own a drill, I can own a house, I can own a dog. Why can't I own another human being? I can translate. That's drill for we just know. No, you don't just know. You were raised in a society that taught you all your life that slavery is wrong. And your society taught you that because Christians made it that way. Now, since slavery is a thing of the past in this country, tell me, how does it feel getting owned? And then there's science. Good old science. Let me ask an atheist. No, we want a nerd this time. Who are the ultimate enemies of science?
Christians.
And who are the supreme champions of science?
Atheists.
There you have it. Comes from an atheist calculator, so you know it's mathematically certain. What's the problem with the claims of our atheist friends? Well, in the past, there were many scientific developments over many centuries, and these developments happened around the world. But the scientific revolution occurred in a certain place at a certain time, and the people who were responsible for the scientific revolution were all Christians of one sort or another, Catholics, Protestants, an occasional heretic, but they all believed in God and the Bible. The pioneers of the scientific revolution, again, all of whom were some variety of Christian, through their discoveries in astronomy and physics and chemistry and biology, gave rise to modern science. So who set the stage so that modern atheists could be so into science? Christians did. They did all the heavy lifting. And then they handed atheists modern science on a platter and said, here's how it's done, you're welcome to join us. Atheists, as always, responded by saying, actually, Christians, this is ours. It's always been ours. You Christians are in the way. In fact, science needs to be protected from you Christians, because if we don't protect science from Christians, Christians will destroy science. That's why everyone needs to become an atheist. It's the only way to save science. Sound familiar? That was the rallying cry of those gullible narcissists we call the new atheists. And millions of people listened to the lamprey and became atheists. Now we've had over 2 decades of the new atheism. Tell me, how has science improved and flourished over the past 20 years thanks to the new atheists? Turns out it hasn't. Things have gotten significantly worse for science. And Jordan Peterson brought this up with Richard Dawkins. Interestingly, Dawkins seemed to agree with some of what Peterson was saying. Let's watch.
One of the things that I've tried to study is the preconditions for the scientific enterprise itself. You appeared to agree with Alex that there might be presumptions, axioms that need to be accepted. I don't want to put words in your mouth because I want to get this right before the scientific enterprise can begin.
The preconditions for the scientific enterprise. Jordan Peterson is speaking at a somewhat scholarly level. I'll try to break this down a bit. Scientific investigation takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, sometimes a lot of money. Going back to the early days of the scientific revolution, if you're going to try to figure out a law of nature, which is going to end up being some neat little equation, that's something that might take years of your life. Before you even embark, you already have to believe certain things. You have to believe that the law of nature is there, waiting to be discovered. In order to believe that, you have to believe that you're in a universe that operates according to laws. You have to believe that you're the kind of being that's capable of figuring out the laws of nature. A mouse can't do it. A gorilla can't do it, but you can. You have to believe that or you wouldn't bother trying. And you have to believe that discovering the law is good, that understanding the universe is good. These are the kinds of beliefs that need to be in place before science as a serious enterprise can get started.
I've tried to think those through. So let me lay out a couple of them. This is partly what I've done while trying to make the case, for example, that you're more of a Christian than you think you are. So, for example,
how perfect is the grin on Dawkins' face when Peterson says he's more of a Christian than he thinks he is. Dawkins is thinking, are you serious? I don't believe in God or the virgin birth or the resurrection or heaven. How am I more of a Christian than I realize? But Peterson is referring to preconditions of science that make way more sense with Christianity as a foundation than they do with atheism as a foundation. And of course, since atheism is a mere lack, as our atheist friends assure us, it couldn't possibly be a foundation for anything. Now, for some of these preconditions.
I think that the scientific enterprise is motivated by the axiomatic presumption that truth tends towards a unity. I think that it's predicated on the notion that there is a logical order that's intrinsic to the cosmos, that fundamental order is good, that it's intelligible to human beings, and that discovering that order and aligning ourselves with it makes for life more abundant.
I'm not sure exactly what he means by truth tending towards a unity, because there are multiple things in the philosophy of science that have to do with a unity of science. As an example of what he might be referring to, suppose I drop this drill. It's going to fall. See? How did I know it would fall? Well, I've seen things fall a lot in my life, and I assume that the way things have worked throughout my life is the way things are going to work now. There's a unity there. This particular kind of unity is called the uniformity of nature. But that's not something we really discover. It's something we take for granted. So maybe he means something like this. I can drop this calculator, and it will do the same thing the drill did. They're completely different things, and yet they follow the same neat little equation. I can go to the window and look at the moon. It's in orbit, so it has a different kind of motion than just falling. But why doesn't the moon fly off into space? Oddly enough, the exact same law that causes the drill and the calculator to fall keeps the moon from flying off into space. What seem like completely different things are actually following the same law. So you look around and you see endless diversity. Everything is different from everything else. And yet there's an underlying unity that you can discover through science. That's one kind of unity that science tends towards. There are more. The other preconditions of science that Peterson mentioned were that there's a logical order intrinsic to the cosmos, that this order is good, that it's intelligible to human beings. Intelligible means that it's capable of being understood by a rational agent, and that discovering this order and aligning ourselves with it makes for life more abundant. But what does any of this have to do with Richard Dawkins being more of a Christian than he realizes?
I think that this scientific enterprise is also predicated on the idea that the truth will set you free. And I think all of those axioms are religious and derived from the Judeo-Christian tradition.
Aha! The preconditions of science are all religious ideas. Science tends towards a unity because one God creates and sustains the universe. The universe is intelligible because it was created by a rational being. We're the kinds of things that can understand the universe because we were created in God's image. And understanding the universe is good because when we learn about the laws of the universe, we're learning about the mind of God. You can look through the writings of the pioneers of the scientific revolution. These ideas are all over the place. And they're religious ideas that need to be in place for science to get off the ground. Where did Richard Dawkins get ideas that, in one form or another, are taken for granted in science? He didn't get them from atheism. Atheism has no positive content. He ultimately got those ideas from Christianity without realizing where they came from. And that's why Dawkins is more of a Christian than he realizes.
And if you don't believe that, you have to account for why science emerged in Europe and nowhere else in the entire history of humanity, for example, and why it's under assault from like all quarters now as that underlying metaphysic disappears. Like you haven't had to be concerned with the mythological substrate in your lifetime in some sense because it was intact.
Yeah.
And
3 important things here. First, Peterson says that if you don't think the preconditions of science are ideas that come from the Judeo-Christian tradition, then why did science take off when a bunch of European Christians said, hey, we've got these ideas. If these ideas are correct, then we can actually figure out the universe because it's made by a rational agent and we're made in his image. If science didn't spring from these ideas, why did it arise among people who had these ideas and put their ideas to the test? Second, Peterson points out that as the religious ideas are being attacked, science is being attacked too. And Richard Dawkins is on the receiving end of these attacks. He can't talk about gender as a biologist without being attacked. Science has been demoted. It's now only useful when it serves the latest whims of whatever group is screaming the loudest. In fact, look at what just happened. From the Telegraph, Richard Dawkins quits Atheism Foundation for backing transgender religion. Scientist accuses U.S. group of caving in to hysterical squeals of cancel culture. Richard Dawkins has resigned from an Atheism Foundation over its imposition of a new religion of transgenderism. Professor Dawkins, the evolutionary biologist and atheist, stepped down from the board of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, FFRF, on Saturday after it censored an article supporting the belief that gender is biological. Professor Dawkins accused the group of caving to the hysterical squeals of cancel culture after it deleted the article from its website, saying it was a mistake to have published it. His resignation followed that of 2 other scientists, Jerry Coyne and Steven Pinker, who accused the foundation of imposing an ideology with the dogma, blasphemy, and heretics of a religion. The scientists' resignations come after the Freedom from Religion Foundation's Free Thought Now website published a piece last month by Kat Grant entitled, "What is a Woman?", which argued that any attempt to define womanhood on biological terms is inadequate and that a woman is whoever she says she is. So, scientists are leaving atheist organizations for being anti-science and for forcing a new religion on people. I guess if we've learned anything from science, it's that nature abhors a vacuum. Third, Dawkins agreed with Peterson on this. Let's see that part again, but extend it.
you haven't had to be concerned with the mythological substrate in your lifetime in some sense because it was intact.
Yeah.
And so the universities could flourish and you had your freedom, remarkable freedom to pursue your scientific enterprise wherever you wanted. And people lauded you for it. Like that time is threatened, and seriously so.
When there was a large Christian majority population, atheists could complain about Christians and Christians could complain about atheists. But atheists, like Richard Dawkins, were completely free to say whatever they wanted. Now that the population is changing and the ideas that are the preconditions of science are being cast aside, science itself is suddenly under attack.
And I think it's partly because these metaphysical assumptions have now become questionable, and that's part of the reason that I'm attending to them. It's not because I don't admire the accuracy of quantum prediction, for example, or celebrate what Musk is doing with his capability of sending rockets to Mars. It's like more power to the technological enterprise. But you know what's happening in the universities? It's awful.
And Jordan Peterson speaks from experience here. What happened when Peterson shared his thoughts with our brave new world? The College of Psychologists of Ontario said he has to go to re-education camp or he can't practice psychology. Psychologists, evolutionary biologists, they're finding out that other people now decide what they're allowed to say, even about science, and that the people who decide what they're allowed to say are, again, whatever group screams the loudest. So, are we getting closer to the scientific utopia that the new atheists were looking forward to? Or is science, stripped of its foundations, being forced to bow to the whims of the mob?
And that's not a scientific problem. It's okay.
I agree about that.
Okay.
I think it's an interesting question why science emerged in Europe. I mean, and I'm not enough of a historian to know. It is even possible that Christianity did have something to do with that, and I wouldn't categorically deny that.
Acknowledging that you don't know and haven't studied enough to comment is a good step forward. We can only hope that some of Dawkins' followers will learn something from this glimpse of intellectual humility. Will they? Of course not. The Dawkins drones never learn anything.
But that doesn't in any way increase my trust in the validity of Christian propositions like the resurrection, the virgin birth, the miracles, and Jesus is the Son of God.
Perfectly fair point. You can recognize various accomplishments of Christians and even believe that some Christian ideas may have had a positive impact without believing in Christianity as a whole or in particular Christian doctrines like the virgin birth or the resurrection.
Christianity may have had some kind of historical facilitating effect that led to the Renaissance, that led to the scientific revolution. And that would be a very interesting historical analysis, but it doesn't bear upon the truth of the propositions of the Christian religion.
It doesn't bear upon the truth of the propositions of the Christian religion. Well, some of the propositions of the Christian religion, as Jordan Peterson pointed out, are religious ideas that are the preconditions of science. So some ideas of Christianity have massive scientific confirmation. You can say, well, the fact that Christianity got these ideas right doesn't mean that they got other things right, and that's true. But the ideas that Christianity got right were derived from Christian theology, so I wouldn't say that getting these big ideas right has no bearing on whether Christianity got other ideas right. I would say, yes, getting certain ideas right doesn't mean you got other things right. But if Christianity got these big ideas right, you might want to take a closer look at some of these other ideas because they're all connected in Christianity. I would also say that since the preconditions of science are religious ideas, and these ideas make absolutely no sense on a foundation of atheism, which again can't be a foundation for anything, maybe now would be a good time for atheists to stop pretending that they're the champions of science and that Christians are enemies of science. Atheism didn't produce these ideas. Atheism is parasitic. It latched on to Christianity, became energized by feeding on some brilliant ideas of Christians, and then attacked Christianity. Unfortunately, as atheism was sucking the blood out of Christianity, it didn't manage to absorb a single drop of gratitude. Now, if you're an atheist and you're thinking, well, I've never acted like atheists are the heroes and guardians of science, and I'm quite thankful to Christians or other people who've helped improve the world, congratulations. I'm not talking about you. I don't know any official statistics here. Perhaps most atheists aren't like the atheists who are constantly bragging about being the saviors of science and reason. But I have to respond to the people I hear from, and sadly, the people I hear from tend to be the people who can't stop running their mouths, no matter how little they know about anything. So, let me say, not to atheists in general, but specifically to the perpetually hostile and narcissistic atheists who are still running their mouths about getting rid of Christianity to pave the way for science, even after seeing millions of people become atheists without benefiting science in any noticeable way whatsoever, you guys are looking all kinds of stupid right now. You made predictions about what would happen if large numbers of people became atheists. None of your predictions were right. You were wrong about everything. Your position has been massively disconfirmed by reality, which means that if you continue pretending that clearing Christianity out of the way and winning converts to atheism will somehow pave the way for a scientific utopia, we'll have to regard you as the champions, not of science, but of pseudoscience.